So, fellas, we've just had UFC Tampa, one of the best ways to end a year. A ton of finishes on this card. I'd say, I'm not even just saying this because of recency bias, but one of the best fight nights this year. We're going to be matchmaking every fighter on this card. We'll split the timestamps into two, so we'll do the prelims at the beginning, every winner on the prelims, and then we'll do the main card, every fighter that fought on the main card. But yeah, like I said, great card. Colby Covington getting finished. Buckley, probably the number one contender about next, but we'll talk about the matches when we get onto them. We'll start off with the prelims. Davy Grant. I think he should fight Cody Garbrandt. Davy Grant's underrated, man. I know he's 38 years old, but he should have arguably beaten Adrian Yanez. He arguably beat Daniel Marcos, who, as we saw later on in the fight, those have got high-level bantamweights as well. So Davy Grant, I think we do him versus Cody Garbrandt. Garbrandt's in this weird position where he's definitely not ranked worthy, but he shouldn't be fighting bottom-of-the-barrel talent. We saw him when he fought Brian Kelleher, knocked him out. Then we saw him get a huge step up against Davison Figueiredo, got choked out. I think Davy Grant is the perfect kind of opponent to see how good Cody Garbrandt is. If he can go out there and beat Davy Grant, it shows that he's kind of still got it because, like I said, Davy Grant is very well-rounded, quite dangerous on the feet, still got the skills despite being quite old. But if Cody Garbrandt can then go lose to Davy Grant, I mean, first of all, that's a huge win for Davy Grant and he's going to finally get the respect he deserves. But then that kind of shows us that maybe Cody Garbrandt doesn't have it. I think it's a big fight for Davy Grant, which I think he deserves from the amount of robberies he's had to deal with, like I said, with the likes of Yanez and Daniel Marcos. So I think this would be a really fun fight. A quick striker like Cody Garbrandt versus a well-rounded guy who's also pretty good on the feet in Davy Grant. Obviously, I'm going to pick Garbrandt to win this, but I think this is a good step up for Davy Grant. A good kind of fight to kind of test how good Cody Garbrandt is. Don't rebook the fight with Miles Johns, especially after Miles Johns just lost to Felipe Lima. There's not really much interest in that matchup. Let's do Cody Garbrandt versus Davy Grant. I think that's a perfect fight next. And then for Felipe Lima, who beat Miles Johns, I want to see him get an opportunity at the rankings. I want to see him versus Dan Ige. I think Dan Ige is still ranked at number 14th and he's lost to half the division. Yeah, Dan Ige is definitely going to have to fight outside the rankings now. Like I said, fought nearly every ranked fighter and lost to most of them. Felipe Lima has honestly star potential. He kicked off the UFC career on short notice by submitting Mohamed Naimov. I thought that alone could have earned him a ranked fight, and then he just went out there and beat Miles Johns. Very good, very skilled fighter. He looks ridiculously good to say that he's only just joined the UFC 2 fights ago. I know he was a champion and not scum, but he looks pretty talented. He's got star potential, speaks fluent English. I think we give him an opportunity at the rankings, and I think him versus Dan Ige would be a fire fight. If he can beat Dan Ige, I mean, first of all, this would be a really good fight. You've got a boxer with good jiu-jitsu in Dan Ige. You've got a technical striker who's also got high-level grappling in Felipe Lima. I think this is a perfect fight stylistically, and it also has big implications. If Dan Ige can beat Felipe Lima, he's just shut down a big bantamweight prospect, keeps him in the rankings, and obviously Felipe Lima can beat Dan Ige. He's going to be ranked. There's a lot of big fights from there, so I say we do this on maybe like a fight night on the main card, or even like a pay-per-view prelim headliner. Felipe Lima, Dan Ige, huge fight, good opportunity for Felipe Lima. I hope he does get a ranking shot next. If they keep giving him these unranked guys, I think it's kind of just a waste of potential. Felipe Lima's definitely earned a ranking shot. Let's do him versus Dan Ige. And then for Sean Woodson, again, I think we should give him a ranking spot. I didn't really want to give him a ranking spot after he beat Alex Caceres because it was a very controversial fight. Most people thought it was a robbery, but he's gone out there, he's knocked out Padilla. Most people expected him to win. It's not like he's a game-changing knockout. I want to see him versus Edson Barboza. I think this would be a really, really fun kickboxing fight. Edson Barboza, I don't need to tell you about his kickboxing. He used to be one of the best kickboxers the UFC have ever seen. Obviously fallen off massively in these past couple of years, but he's still got the kickboxing. He's going to be taking on Steve Garcia. I think if he loses to Steve Garcia, we do him versus Sean Woodson. If Sean Woodson can win, we get him ranked. But yeah, I think this would be a really fun kickboxing matchup. Sean Woodson's a really good, rangy technical striker. Probably one of the most rangy fighters in the featherweight division. 6'2", extremely lanky, uses his range really well. Just knocked out Padilla. Before that, beat Caceres in a very close fight. I think we give him a big step up now. Him versus Edson Barboza. Like I said, I think this would be an amazing kickboxing match. It's a good chance for Edson Barboza to get on track. He's not facing an absolute killer. I know Sean Woodson just knocked out Padilla, but it's not like Woodson is this huge KO artist. I think this could be a perfect fight. If Edson Barboza beats Steve Garcia, then that's a good fight to get Sean Woodson in the rankings. And even if he loses to Steve Garcia, him versus Woodson for maybe like his final fight, could be a good fight to get Woodson those big fights. So Sean Woodson, Edson Barboza, I think that'll be a really fun kickboxing fight. And then I think we do Jalin Turner versus Yoel Alvarez. I've been saying for like the past 3 fights, we need to give Yoel Alvarez a ranked fight. We need to do it. He's got 22 fights, or 22 wins, 22 finishes. He's got a 100% finish rate in all of his wins. And that's exactly what he did. Went out there against Ricard Klaus, got the finish, 2 KOs in a row, and this guy's meant to be a submission artist. He's becoming one of the most dangerous, or the most dangerous prospect in the lightweight division. In my opinion, Yoel Alvarez is Definitely the most dangerous unranked lightweight and the best unranked lightweight in the world. We need to give him a ranking shot. I think we give him somebody like Jalin Turner or Benoit Saint-Denis next. I think Jalin Turner could be a really good fight. On the feet, very, very dangerous, the two of them. I mean, Jalin Turner is one of the most powerful dudes in the lightweight division. Bit of a weight bully, low fight IQ, but he's still very powerful. Yoel Alvarez, coming off two KOs in a row, and he's got the submission game as well. I think he beats Jalin Turner, and if you don't want to do him versus Turner, then do him versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Either way, I want to see Yoel Alvarez get a ranking shot. Apart from his debut loss, he's only lost in the UFC to Arman Sarukian, who's now going to be fighting for a belt. Apart from that, he's finished every single fighter that he's fought. Let's do him versus Jalin Turner. And I don't want to see it on the prelims as well. You can't put Yoel Alvarez, who's one of the most exciting, one of the most dangerous fighters in the UFC. You can't put him on the prelims. You've got to put him on the main card. Him versus Jalin Turner. Main card of a pay-per-view or a fight night, I'm not bothered. Maybe even like a fight night. Honestly, if they did like a fight night main event between Yoel Alvarez and Jalin Turner in like the Apex, I wouldn't even be mad because it's a firefight. So I think we give Yoel Alvarez the ranking spot, put him against Jalin Turner. And then for Michael Johnson, got another KO against Zaytar, just like I thought he did, or like I thought he would. Let's give him Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert is, I don't really know how to describe Jai Herbert. He's not that good. He's a pretty technical striker. He's got decent clinch work. He's basically just a crap version of Leon Edwards. He trains at Leon's gym. He's a lightweight. He's a bit low-level lightweight competition. I think this could be a good fight. Maybe a bit of a step up for Michael Johnson because Jai Herbert is coming off a win. But again, he's not the most talented guy in the lightweight division. I think this could be a good fight for Michael Johnson, who previous to his past 2 wins looked like he weren't going to win another fight in the UFC. But he's just knocked out Zaytar. Maybe do it for UFC London. I know there's a UFC London card in February. Maybe you do Michael Johnson versus Jai Herbert, considering that Jai Herbert's from the UK. I think this could be a good fight for Michael Johnson to pick up another win, slowly raising the levels of competition, getting him back in there, because he needs to step up in competition, considering he's won his last 2, just knocked out Zaytar. Michael Johnson versus Jai Herbert. And then for the main card, Sterling just went out there and knocked out Tushio Tukos. Well, I actually didn't knock him out, went to a decision with him when most people were expecting him to get the knockout win. So I think for Sterling, we do him versus Modestas Bukauskas. This is like the right step up in competition. We're giving him someone who's in the light heavyweight division. Obviously, UFC worthy is Modestas Bukauskas, but he's not extremely high level. We're not rushing him too quick. I think this could be a good fight for Sterling. 2 kickboxers. Yeah, there's not really much to say about this. I was expecting Sterling to go out there and absolutely blow him out the window. That just wasn't the case. Give him Modestas Bukauskas. And for Tushio Tukos, yeah, let's just see him against nobody. Not really UFC worthy. He lost on the road to the UFC. He lost to Umar Sy in the UFC, and now he's just lost to Sterling. Even though he was able to survive the decision, I don't think we keep him in the UFC, get him out. And then for Adrian Yanez. Adrian Yanez is a bit of a disappointment in the UFC. Like, he was meant to be the next big prospect and obviously got knocked out by Rob Font, finished by Jonathan Martinez. Now he's just gone and lost to Daniel Marcus as well. Not that he's not talented and he's completely washed, but I think he's going to be one of these guys, kind of like a Nate Landwehr in the featherweight division, where he's going to be unranked, but he's going to produce fun fights. I think we give him Taylor Lapilus. Taylor Lapilus, apart from his loss to Farid Basharat, has been on a roll in the UFC. Looked really good in his last fight at UFC Paris. He's a big French prospect, and he needs to step up in competition in the bantamweight division. I think Adrian Yanez is that perfect step up in competition. This is very winnable for Adrian Yanez, but I think this would be such a good fight in the feet. Lapilus is a super quick, rangy kickboxer. Adrian Yanez, one of the best offensive boxers in the bantamweight division. We're a step down in competition for Adrian Yanez, a step up in competition for Taylor Lapilus. Maybe in like the next UFC French card, UFC Paris card, we do this, but yeah, Adrian Yanez, Taylor Lapilus, I think this would be a really fun fight to see on the feet. And then for Daniel Marcos, we got to give him a ranking spot now. I was kind of hesitant after giving him a ranking spot after beating Davy Grant because it was a robbery. Picked up one in his last fight, looked really good, and now he's just beating Adrian Yanez. He's undefeated. He looks increasingly better in every single one of his fights in the UFC. Let's give him Kyler Phillips. We need to give him that ranking spot now. I want to see him against Kyler Phillips because I do think he's got rank potential. Like I said, undefeated. Just beat Adrian Yanez in pretty decent fashion as well. Looks him better in every single one of his fights. Him versus Kyler Phillips, if he can beat Kyler Phillips, gets him into the rankings, gets him some big fights. But it's also a very winnable fight for Kyler Phillips, because even though Daniel Marcus is undefeated, it's not like he's the next big thing in the bantamweight division. So I think this could be the rightful step up for Daniel Marcos. Him versus Kyler Phillips, who's just basically lost pretty dominantly to Rob Font. I think that could be next. And then we do Vitor Petrino versus Zhang Mingyang. Yeah, Vitor Petrino, what a fraud this guy is. I thought he was going to be the next pick in the light heavyweight division. He gets submitted by Anthony Smith. I thought he was a bit of a fluke. And now he's just been knocked out by Dustin Jacoby. Yeah, Vitor Petrino, bit of a disappointment in the light heavyweight division. Not as good as I thought he would be. Let's use him to build someone else's name. Let's put him against Zhang Mingyang, who is the most dangerous up-and-coming guy in the UFC. 18 wins, 18 first-round finishes. as Zhang Mingyang just got a really brutal knockout with UFC China. And I think if he can beat Vito Petrino, then we can give him a ranking spot. I don't know if we give him somebody in the rankings just yet, because I don't know if he's earned it as of right now. But I think if we can give him Vito Petrino, we can beat Vito Petrino, which I think he would. If you're getting knocked out by Dustin Jacoby, you're not surviving Zhang Mingyang. Yeah, do Zhang Mingyang versus Vito Petrino. Zhang Mingyang, if he wins, gets him in the rankings, and like I said, he's a massive light heavyweight prospect. That's going to be huge, and it's also a winnable fight for Vito Petrino. And then for Dustin Jacoby, I think we give him another ranking spot. I know he lost 4 of his last 5 coming into this fight, but he just beat Vito Petrino, got the fraud check. So I think we do him versus the loser of Bogdan Guskov and Johnny Walker. Guskov and Walker are going to be taking each other on at 3-11, and yeah, I think the loser of that fight is probably going to fight somebody outside the rankings. I think Dustin Jacoby's that perfect fight. And I think it's very winnable. If you do Jacoby versus Walker, I think Jacoby's got a very high chance of knocking out Walker, especially how chinny he's been recently, especially if he gets knocked out by Guskov. And if Guskov loses, bit of a fraud in the light heavyweight division, considering he's already lost to Uzdemir again. Another winnable fight for Dustin Jacoby, because Guskov's very hittable. So I think we do Dustin Jacoby versus the loser of Guskov and Walker, and if he can beat them, then we give him somebody in the rankings. Then we had the co-main event. No, we did. We had the featured fight then. Bruno Silva versus Manel Kape. Bruno Silva getting knocked out by Manel Kape. Got a big step up in competition. Couldn't pass the test. I think we do him versus Jafel Filo. Jafel Filo, apart from his loss to Makayev, I'm pretty sure that's his only loss in the UFC. He's been on a roll. Really good submission artist, and I think he deserves a shot at the rankings. He's on a winning streak. One of the best unranked flyweights in the world. Bruno Silva's ranked number 12, just got knocked out. He's going to be fighting outside the rankings. I think this is a good fight where we can give Filo a ranking opportunity, but it's also not a complete massive step up, because we're putting him against Bruno Silva, who's dangerous, but has just been KO'd. So Silva versus Filo. And then for Manel Kape, let's do him versus Alex Perez. I think this is probably the logical move to make next. Manel Kape has lost to a lot of people in the top 5. Even Makayev beat him, who's not even in the UFC anymore. But it seems like Manel Kape's in this weird position where everybody outside the top 10 that he faces, he beats in pretty dominant fashion. But then every single time he faces somebody in the top 10, he loses pretty comfortably too. So I think Alex Perez could be that good fight. Perez, he had a good start to the year by knocking out Mateusz Nicolau when no one expected him to. Then he got injured and lost to Tatsuro Taira. He's probably going to be making a comeback in early 2025. This is a good fight. If Manel Kape can beat Alex Perez, that's a good win for Manel Kape against, obviously, a top 10 opponent, and it also gets him in the top 5. And if he can get in the top 5, there's going to be big fights from there. And if Alex Perez can beat Manel Kape, then I guess you can kind of say that the Taira loss was a bit of a fluke, considering it was an injury, and that he would have lost 2. He would have won 2 of his last 3 against Manel Kape. And who else did he beat? Manel Kape and Mateusz Nicolau. So Manel Kape, Alex Perez. I'm surprised this fight hasn't happened. I think that should be next. And then for the co-main event, Billy Quarantillo, a bit of a chinny guy. Let's do him versus Darren Elkins. Yeah, I thought it was going to be Cub Swanson. I thought maybe the striking's better. He's in a dogfight, but I think this will be an absolute dogfight. Darren Elkins is on a bit of a winning streak. Just absolutely messed up Daniel Pineda a few weeks ago. Elkins is a fun fighter to watch. Always in a dogfight. Always in a scrap. Great jiu-jitsu. Yeah, like I just said, always in a dogfight. And I think we do him versus Billy Quarantillo, who always tends to be in a dogfight. But I feel like Quarantillo's style doesn't really match his chin. Like, he's always in a bit of a dogfight, but then he doesn't have the chin to back it up. But I think we do him versus Darren Elkins. This is very winnable for both of them. I could easily see Billy Quarantillo just, outstriking Darren Elkins for the majority of the fight, picking off the decision win. But I can also see Darren Elkins roughing up Billy Quarantillo, getting a submission, or even finishing him on the feet. This will be an amazing fight to do on like an Apex main card. Billy Quarantillo, Darren Elkins, they've both lost to Cub Swanson. Let's do the fight. And then for Cub Swanson, I think we do him versus Nate Landwehr. This would be an absolute banger. Nate Landwehr, I don't know really how to describe his style. Again, one of these fighters that he's always in a dogfight, but he's not like a Justin Gaethje where he's got the technique to back it up. He kind of just brawls. Sometimes he'll win, sometimes he'll lose. Not for having an insane heart, not for having a bunch of dogging him, but he's just not really ranked worthy. You've got Cub Swanson, who's a very, very dangerous striker, and it seems like there's a theme going on where we put Cub Swanson against these, I guess, scrappers, and he's always going to pull off a knockout. This is very winnable for both of them. I can see Nate Landwehr taking Cub Swanson into deep waters and getting the win, but I can also definitely see Cub Swanson kind of landing on that chin of late with Nate Landwehr, knocking him out cold, because Nate Landwehr is very vulnerable, very hittable. So Cub Swanson, Nate Landwehr, banger of a fight in the featherweight division that you can do on like a main card of a fight night, or even like a prelim of a pay-per-view. So Cub Swanson versus Nate Landwehr. Then the main event, Colby Covington just got messed up by Buckley. He needs this. If he's going to continue fighting in the UFC, he's going to need a huge step down in competition, and I feel like that's what Vicente Luque should do. Vicente Luque just destroyed Temba Garimbo in dominant fashion, and I would never say that he deserves somebody in the top 6 from that, but I think it's more of a case of Covington get a step down rather than Luque getting a step up in competition. Covington's probably going to be ranked number 8th in the division. He looked terrible in his last 2 fights. We need to give him a step down. I'm not saying we give him somebody outside the rankings, but I think him versus Vicente Luque could be a good fight. Luque's got solid jiu-jitsu, very dangerous on the feet as well. Colby Covington, once a top contender, and if you'd have asked me this 2 years ago, I'd have said that Colby Covington mauls Vicente Luque. It's not even close, but he just got beaten by Leon Edwards, well, he just got destroyed by Buckley before that loss to Leon Edwards, so I think we need to give Covington a step down. Him versus Vicente Luque, another fight night main event or something like a featured fight on a pay-per-view. Might be too big of a step up for Luque, but I honestly think he beats Colby Covington at this moment in time. Even though you might not think he deserves somebody in the top 6, he just got a brutal finish in 49 seconds. Covington's look trash. Him versus Luque. And then for Buckley, I think we do Buckley versus Gary. I know we called out Kamaru Usman, but I don't think it really makes sense if you look at the welterweight division, because Leon needs an opponent. Jack Della Maddalena needs an opponent. I think we do Jack Della Maddalena versus Usman for UFC Perth or UFC Sydney, and then Leon versus Sean Brady. And I think we do Buckley versus Gary. I think this would be a really fun fight to make. Buckley's in that position where he needs a #1 contender fight. 6 wins in the what division is it? 6 wins in the welterweight division now. 4 of them coming by way of a knockout. Just knocked out and finished Colby Covington. Well, he didn't get the knockout, but just finished Colby Covington, who's obviously a former top contender. I think he's 1 fight away from a ranking spot. Ian Gary was once in the same position of Buckley, had a very close fight with Shavkat that he lost, but he stocked Raws. I think we can kind of market this as the #1 contender fight. Ian Gary versus Buckley. If Buckley can beat Ian Gary, which he's got a very good chance of doing so, very, very dangerous on the feet. He's also a heavy pressure wrestler. Then I think we give him a title shot against either Bilal Muhammad or Shavkat, the winner of that. And if Ian Gary can shut down the hype of Buckley, shut down the winning streak of Buckley, get back in the winning column, I honestly don't mind Ian Gary getting another title shot as well. So Buckley, Gary, I think that should be the fight next. If it is Buckley versus Usman, I'm not going to be mad. I think Buckley versus anybody in like the top 3, top 4 makes sense at this moment in time. I wouldn't mind seeing him versus Leon. I wouldn't mind seeing him versus Usman. But I think him versus Gary would be the fight to make next as like a #1 contender fight. And then we do maybe Usman versus JDM, Leon versus Sean Brady. But dominant performance by Buckley. Went out there and did what we all thought he was going to do. Knocked out Colby Covington in dominant. Well, I keep saying knocked him out. It was a doctor stoppage. But beat Colby Covington in brutal fashion. But yeah, UFC Tampa, one of the best fight nights this year. Tons of finishes. That's how I'd matchmake it. Let me know your thoughts and thank you for watching.